Hello viewer, the Nameless Scholar here, and in this video I will be debunking 7 claims made against Age of Sigmar. The Age of Sigmar of today is a vastly different beast compared to the Age of Sigmar of release. It has gotten significant changes both rules-wise and lore-wise, and has gained its own identity. Since Warhammer Age of Sigmar will forever have the stigma of being the game that killed Warhammer Fantasy, this video is meant to essentially, despite this stigma, to show that Age of Sigmar is worth getting into. Because currently the lore is pretty awesome. With that being said, let's begin the video. The first claim that comes to mind is that Age of Sigmar is not Grimdark. This is completely false. Just looking at the Order factions with intellectual honesty alone will debunk this. The Stormcast Eternals. They are immortals doomed to die over and over again against the enemies of Sigmar until they are nothing but walking suits of armor. The cities of Sigmar. Each and every single one of them, without exception, are mini-empire of man, which are essentially also just hive cities, but better. But that's not saying much, as the paranoia of living in the empire is still ever present. The Sylvaneth, isolationist xenophobes who hates anything and everything that doesn't worship Alariel. Lumineth Realm Lords. Teclis is a jerk who indoctrinated his worshippers, and they didn't learn from their past as they fell into civil war again, and had the Hedonites of Slaanesh wreak havoc upon Hyash. Each of the Lumineth realms is under attack mainly by the Hedonites of Slaanesh and the Idoneth Deepkin, and of course, the others. The Idoneth Deepkin, cursed to be the Age of Sigmar equivalent of the Dark Eldar, no choice in the matter. The Daughters of Cain. They are led by Morathi. That's it, I don't have to say anything else. The Kharadron Overlords. Greedy air pirates who will kill you if you don't pay them then and there. Fiery Slayers. Arrogant, almost naked mercenaries that will kill you if you don't pay them then and there. And finally, the Lizardmen, with every Lizardmen constellation's interpretation of the Great Plan varying, as it can range from aiding the Warmbloods against chaos to the genocide of everything and anything that isn't them. The second claim is that the Stormcast Eternals are just fantasy space marines. They're not fantasy space marines anymore. The Stormcast Eternals have formed their own identity beyond Sigmarines and have become Valhallans. Only the worthiest of Sigmar's warriors who die in battle are chosen as Stormcast Eternals. Also, more proof for this is, for example, Yidnastra, who looks like a Valkyrie, the Vindictors, Vanquishers, the Lightning Motifs, and looking at their new units, they are Order warriors, essentially the anti-Chaos warrior. For units like Retributors and Annihilators, you might have a point, but they are the oldest units of the setting when Age of Sigmar tried to replace fantasy and failed. The third claim that is made against Age of Sigmar is that apparently the Stormcast Eternals are clearly the favorites of Games Workshop. The truth is that this is just projection and cope by purists. Age of Sigmar does not have the favoritism that 40k has, as all factions beat each other up as they get beaten. Whereas Abaddon managed to do what? Achieve only a quarter of what Horus did in 7 years in 10,000 years? And, by the way, that's being generous. Archaon has humbled both Sigmar and Nagash, and brought 7 of the 8 mortal realms to its knees. Stormcast Eternals are not exempt from being punching bags, as they also punch back as much as they get punched. Whereas the Space Marines, especially the Ultramarines, will always be the favorites of GW. Even model range-wise, Age of Sigmar has only 2 neglected factions, the Skaven and the Beasts of Chaos. How long were the Tau, Wrathworlds, Dark Eldar, and Tyranids neglected? Alright, at least 2 decades. Orcs and Dark Eldar models still use just a lot of the 4th and 5th edition stuff. Wrathworlds have gotten half a rework, and only recently did the Tyranids gain new models. The 4th claim is that Age of Sigmar is an abomination that wears Warhammer Fantasy skin. The truth? Not only is it not the case anymore, it is also denial and cope by purists. It is true that in the beginning, Age of Sigmar tried to replace fantasy and it failed. So instead, it formed its own identity, whereas Age of Sigmar has now its own identity. Warhammer the Old World is the real corpse that wears fantasy skin and says, "I'm the one you love." Warhammer the Old World is nothing but a soulless cash grab, and if you want more details on it, watch my last video, the Warhammer the Old World section in particular. The 5th claim is that the gameplay of Age of Sigmar is just watered down 40k. The truth is, this is completely false, coming either from ignorance or from outright intellectual dishonesty. The reason why this is not the case is because Age of Sigmar is used as a testbed for Warhammer 40k. So, while Warhammer 40k was still in 7th edition, Age of Sigmar 1st edition came out in 2015, where afterwards in 2017, Warhammer 40k 8th edition comes out, and it has brought over many of the rules from Age of Sigmar to 40k, such as Mortal Wounds, a reworked wound system, a reworked weapon and ballistic skill system, as well as stratagems and command points. Now, as simple as Age of Sigmar is, it has superior rules to 40k, and has had superior rules to 40k ever since 2nd edition came around. And as much as it has simple rules, Age of Sigmar is actually tactically deep, where you have to properly utilize your positioning with your hammer and anvil. Otherwise, no amount of good luck is going to save you. Cavalry, monsters, and war machines feel like actual cavalry, monsters, and war machines. Whereas vehicles in New 40k feel like bigger and wider infantry with more weapons, as well as also feeling like glorified transports. In Age of Sigmar, you can actually negate your weaknesses and bad RNG via army rules and map superiority, whereas in 40k, it is a matter of who rolls the better dice the most to win. Gotta exploit those lethal and devastating wounds. And Warhammer 8th and 9th edition 40k are wargames trying to be video games, while 10th edition is a wargame that is trying to be a video game as well as a trading card game. 10th edition is a streamlined grey slop that tries to appeal to everyone, and it ends up appealing to nobody but normies and ex-trading card game players who have been alienated from MTG or Yu-Gi-Oh!, who play it like a trading card game with no care for the lore and narrative of the setting whatsoever. Which brings me to how Warhammer 40k has a very weak narrative, whereas Age of Sigmar has a much greater emphasis on narrative play, which AOS is narratively rich, Compared to Path to Glory, Crusade sucks and almost nobody plays it, because there is literally no reason to. You're better off playing Horus Heresy. The sixth claim made against Age of Sigmar is that Age of Sigmar weakened Chaos by trapping Slaanesh. This is nothing but cope. Let's start up by saying what Chaos did in 40k again. Like, what did Abaddon do again? Only doing a quarter of what Horus did in 7 years. In 10,000 years. And Be'lakor is just a perpetual fuck-up. And let's compare that to what Chaos did in Age of Sigmar. Oh yeah, they fucking won! Even as Slaanesh was imprisoned, Archaon has humiliated both Sigmar and Nagash, has brought 7 of the 8 mortal realms to their knees, and because of this, the gods realize that they won and have taken a backseat. And they won to the point that Chaos is so spread thin that they cannot respond to everything at once. What did Be'lakor do? He convinced the right hand of Archaon to defect to his side in exchange for power as his right hand. He briefly prevented Stormcast souls from going back to Azir and used those Stormcast souls to forge Eternus into a super chaos warrior. And Be'lakor is on his way to become the god of chaos undivided. Not only that, Slaanesh has technically returned as Sinessa and Exessa, as well as 4 out of 66 chains that bind Slaanesh are now broken. 1 by Archaon, 2 by Morathi, and 1 by Sinessa and Dexessa. The final claim that is made against Age of Sigmar is that apparently Age of Sigmar has no real stakes. The truth is just cope and projection by purists. Do you see a pattern here? Again, Abaddon and Be'lakor are fuck-ups, and Chaos has done nothing aside from them doing stuff and failing. And aside from Chaos winning in Age of Sigmar, what else happened? Morathi has ascended to godhood. Nagash tried turning everyone into undead. War of the Beast, but well written, happened. Slaanesh sort of returned with Sinessa and Exessa. And last time as of recording, with the reveal of the new Daughters of Cain miniature in collaboration with Quentin Tarantino, the Daughters of Cain are now divided in 2. And unlike 40k, all factions beat each other up as much as they are beaten up themselves. So these are the 7 claims made against Age of Sigmar, debunked. I hope that this video has cleared the air, and that whoever is watching this can enjoy Age of Sigmar. I am the Nameless Scholar, and like Dark Angels would say, never forget, never forgive.